Welcome back to No BS Baking. You got JP here. I'm going to be starting a new little segment on some baking shorts. So this one here, check it out. Let me know what you feel in the comments section below. Enjoy. So we're going to talk about natural conditioning. Natural conditioning is something that bakers realized really early on. I mean, since the advent of yeast, and even before that, for thousands of years, they've been naturally conditioning their doughs. You know, they realized that time not only contributed to yeast production within a dough, but it also contributed to acid production in a dough. And this acid production has an effect on flour protein, which allows it to relax and allows all of the flour protein bonds to all form up nice and ultimately give you great gas retention properties just through time. And that's part of the reason that with sourdough, which is well below 5, you know, the sourdoughs are in and around 4 or thereabouts. You don't really mix those too much. You know, it's a lot of folding and a few little procedures like this, but time alone will develop out that gluten and give you the strength and the gas retention properties that you're looking for in order to make a beautiful loaf of bread. So same thing with the kind of these quick breads that they have out there. Pretty much grandma used this. She realized that if her dough came out at 6.5, if she left it there and just let it rest a little bit, let acid or bacteria and yeast start working together, start developing acid, start developing CO2 gas and ethanol and all the rest of it, there was a natural conditioning on the flour proteins, made her dough more extensible, and basically sorted out any potential shortfalls that she had in gluten development during the initial mixing stage. Now, that's great if you have a whole bunch of time. For me, I like things quick. I like things fast. I don't feel like sitting in my kitchen all day long, punching back my dough every hour or 30 minutes or whatever, you know, whatever the process calls for. I like the idea of going to supplemented conditioning, and that's through the introduction of dough conditioners, reducing agents, and acid. Now, don't get scared when I talk about dough conditioners. There's many natural ones out there. Simple things that you have probably in your kitchen right now. And most of the commercial brand dough conditioners and reducing agents that are out there are all derived from completely natural sources. So let's move on and explain this a little bit further. Probably the most common one, and one that most of us are used to, is this one here, which is a mix your dough and then ultimately let it rest for a predetermined amount of time or until it doubles in size, whatever your process calls for. Punch it back, maybe let it rest again, punch it back, and then shape it, proof it, bake it. Now, the red line in the middle here, there's many processes that might require additional rest and punch steps, or might only require one rest and punch step. So this fluctuates a lot, but the most important thing that I'm trying to show here is that the rest and punch steps are essential in order to do your natural conditioning, which we talked about just previously. So this is a secondary method that you can use. One I like better because I'm lazy. And I don't want to sit there and have to rest my dough, punch it back, come back a little bit later, rest it, punch it, this type of stuff. This method I like better because it actually gives you the same type of thing. And it's called Autolyse, and I'm sure many of you have heard about it. So first thing you do is you mix your flour and your water together and you let it sit. And that allows the flour to absorb all the water, and the bacteria starts to do a little bit of a trip in there, and ultimately your gluten relaxes, and all the proteins begin to start lining up, and ultimately you're prepping your dough for good gluten strength and gas retention properties. Now I've got 30 to 60 minutes in there if you left it, say, at room temperature. However, the beautiful part about this method is that you could just mix your dough or your flour and your water together, throw it in the fridge, and leave it and start worrying about it the next day. Of course, keep it covered. Now, then you get into the mixing stage. That's when you add your salt, your sweetener, sugar or whatever, oil, shortening, whatever you're adding into the dough. That's when you do it, and then you mix it as per normal. Now, just keep in mind in this that if you're actually using milk, you've got an enriched formula, and milk is, 30-40% of your overall major liquids. Make sure you put that in the Autolyse also. You want to get all of your liquids into the Autolyse part of the process. So then ultimately you divide it into the desired weights, and you kind of just round it into a tight ball. And then you cover that, put it on your counter, let that rest just for 10 or 15 minutes just to relax out a little bit, and then you start your process of sheeting it. Now, sheeting it is a little bit different than shaping. Sheeting, in the first process, you punch it all down, and you to take all the gas and air bubbles out of the dough. In this type of a process, we're leaning a little bit more to a no-time dough process, and so therefore you need to really sheet that out. Use a rolling pin or something like that and squeeze out all the gases and get into a nice kind of back to a firm dough feeling style of product. Then you shape it. Final shape it for your pan or for your proof basket, and then you proof it, and then you bake it. This takes out a bunch of steps, and even though Autolyse is about 30 to 60 minutes, because you just kind of get your flour and your water all mixed together there, you could even mix them with a spoon or something, not even in your mixing bowl. As long as you get it kind of generally well incorporated, let it sit. And so I don't even really include it as part of the overall baking process because, you could tuck it off to the side there and maybe get back to it in an hour or two if you keep it cool. And now for my last example, because we're getting a little bit closer to the no-time dough process. I'm a lazy baker, as I mentioned. I don't want to spend all day in my kitchen baking bread and punching down loaves and rest periods and all that type of stuff. So in this process here, it requires the introduction of some type of a conditioner or a bread improver in it. Now, there's many commercial brands that you can use out there. Many of them have all natural ingredients and are totally fine to use, even though they might contain some scary names like sodium stearoyl-2-lactylate or L-cysteine hydrochloride. These are this natural stuff, and so I don't want anybody to be too scared about it, but just in case you are, I've included some other ones, and I've included vinegar and orange juice. Now, anybody who's followed along with me in my videos, we all know the benefits of acid and the role it plays on relaxing the gluten and the proteins in the flour and making your dough more extensible and lining up the gluten proteins and basically helping for the important stuff like gas retention properties and strength of the gluten in the bread dough system. So those are just a couple of ones that you can add. L-cysteine is a reducing agent, as I just mentioned. It's used very commonly in the bread industry, and it works a little bit different. It breaks down gluten protein a little bit. It's to do with amino acids and all this stuff, and they kind of attack the proteins and they weaken them a little bit, which gives you that more extensible, type of dough at the end of the day, and ultimately contributes to better gas retention properties also, because your gluten's softer and everything. And then, of course, I got pre-ferment in here. And everybody knows pre-ferments, they start to develop their own acids in it and all of the flavor components, and they also can be used in a dough system for conditioning effects. So anyway, whatever you decide to use in here, you throw it all into your mixer and you mix all the ingredients just like a normal dough. Okay, then you divide it into the predetermined weights, and then you round it into a nice tight ball, and you cover it and throw it on your counter and let it rest for 10 to 15 minutes. This is an important rest time. It's just after you've done all the handling, all the mixing, you need to give your dough just that little bit of time just to relax a little bit. Then, as we mentioned previously, you need to sheet out your dough. You need to get all that gas and air bubbles or anything that's collected in there, sheet it out, and then start to form it and get it into the shape that you want for your pan or your proof basket. And that's it. That's basically the no-time dough process. Well, thank you for watching the video. As usual, I hope to see you again, and be sure to leave your comments and suggestions below. And if you liked what you saw, you figure that it works, let me know by dropping me a thumbs up or hit that subscribe button, okay? I want to keep this channel rolling. So anyway, until next time, keep on baking.